Yep, that's me. You're probably wondering how I ended up in this situation. Well, let me start from the beginning. My name is Alexandra Boguslawskaja. I'm a Belarusian journalist currently in exile. And today I will talk about the freedom of speech in Belarus, the journalistic work during protests in 2020, and about the work of Belarusian media in exile. In case you haven't heard anything about Belarus, it is a country in Eastern Europe with a population of 9.3 million and dictator Alexandr Lukashenko as a head. Belarus gained its independence in 1991, and according to Freedom House, it is the country with an authoritarian regime. Belarus right now is not part of the European Union and not even the part of the Council of Europe, because we still have death penalty. You might heard a lot about Belarus in 2020 when all international media covered our protest against Alexandr Lukashenko. BBC, The Guardian, Washington Post and Al Jazeera all wrote about our protest, about our beautiful and brave people with national white red white flags. But right now there are not so much information about Belarus in international media because we do not have a beautiful protest right now. We only have unprecedented repressions. Today there are 1,450 political prisoners in Belarus, and this number is growing every day. 32 of political prisoners are journalists and media workers, and this is actually a lot. Belarus is in the 5th place among the countries with the highest number of imprisoned journalists, the only European country in the list. And actually, the Reporters Without Borders recognized Belarus as the most dangerous country for journalists in Europe in 2021. But the thing is that Belarus always was quite a dangerous country for journalists. The story began when this guy, Alexandr Lukashenko, came to power in 1994. Already in 1995 and 1996, he held 2 referendums that radically changed our constitution and gave him unlimited power over parliament and judicial system. By the way, fun fact, Lukashenko came to power in 1994. I was born in 1996, 2 years later. It means that my whole life, and I'm 26 right now, I spent during his ruling. The press of that time didn't really like Lukashenko for many reasons. In December 1994, one of the Belarusian MPs presented a report on the corruption in the Lukashenko's inner circle. The parliament obliged newspapers to publish this report. However, at the very last moment, the authorities forbade this report to be published. At the sign of the protest, Belarusian media came out with white spots. And it was only the beginning. Over 29 years of Lukashenko's ruling, we have witnessed a trend for suppression of media freedom in the country. Lukashenko put under the control all state media and indirectly influenced independent media. For example, in the 90s, he forbade state publishing house to print independent newspapers. Also, the authorities used hate speech law and extremism law to silence journalists. Journalists were regularly arrested and some media were forcibly closed. Right now, Lukashenko personally appoints and dismisses the heads of the state media. But nevertheless, Belarusian media were able to arise, work, and even work successfully and gain popularity among Belarusians. I want you to understand clearly, yes, media freedom was limited in Belarus, but still we were able to work. I personally started to work in media sphere in 2017, but my real journalistic work began in 2019 when I became a Deutsche Welle Correspondent in Belarus. In order to work in Belarus for foreign media, I should obtain accreditation from Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So this ID with the word press that I hold in this photo actually gave me a right to work in the country legally. And actually some NGOs consider this practice of accreditation as a repressive one. Actually, you know, this time of summer 2020, this presidential campaign was probably the most exciting time of my life and my work in Belarus. But at the beginning of the year, we didn't actually expect that it would be interesting at all. On the one hand, we had coronavirus pandemic. On the other hand, we didn't actually have a powerful candidates to challenge Lukashenko even on the horizon. But in May 2020, it appeared that we even have 3 powerful candidates. So having the experience of previous elections, we all knew that alternative candidates, opposition leaders, can go to the prison before or after the day of the election. And that is why journalists should be quite quick if they want to take interview with the candidates. And I was a lucky journalist in 2020. I was able to take interview with Sergei Tikhanovsky, political blogger, a week before he was arrested. The same story with the ex-head of large bank, Viktor Babarika. The KGB came after him 2 days after my interview had been published. The ex-head of the Park for Technologies, Valery Tsipkala, was lucky enough to leave Belarus after giving an interview to me. Surprisingly, the campaign that started with 3 men ended up with 3 women. On the right is Maria Kolesnikova, the head of the Babarika's office. On the left is Veronika Tsipkala, the wife of the Valery Tsipkala. And in the center is Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, the wife of the political blogger Sergei Tikhanovsky. After the authorities refused to register Sergei as a candidate and arrested him, she decided to continue his work, and it appeared that she was the only candidate who were registered and actually took part in the elections. I also conducted interview with Svetlana Tikhanovskaya several days after she appeared on political scene, and I remember that I felt that she just a simple Belarusian woman in a difficult situation with husband in prison, and she didn't really know much about politics. I was so lucky journalist in 2020, so I even had the possibility to talk to Alexandr Lukashenko. It was press conference on the election day, the first press conference with Lukashenko that authorities allowed me to attend. And I asked him tricky questions. And I don't know why, maybe my questions triggered him. So after the event, he invited me to talk to him and ask him more questions. The video of our conversation reached more than 1 million views on YouTube. You know, in general, this campaign of 2020 was full of surprises. We never saw such powerful and popular candidates to challenge Lukashenko. We never saw such involvement of citizens in politics. We never saw queues standing in a center to sign up for candidates. And we never saw such a level of violence in Belarus. You know, we all, like journalists, expected that authorities would probably falsify the elections, and people would go to the streets to protest, and the government would do anything to suppress the protest. We all tried to be prepared for it. We bought helmets. This is me trying it on. Some of us even had bulletproof vests. And I remember us making jokes about it. Well, of course we would not need it, just in case. But on election day in August, we all were absolutely shocked. As we expected, the authorities declared that Lukashenko got more than 80% of votes, and people went to the street, facing stun grenades, water cannons, tear gas, and furious officials with weapons. This horror lasted 3 nights. More than 6,000 people were arrested. And later we found out that at the detention center, people were tortured. I was lucky to be safe during that horrible nights, but some of our colleagues were arrested and heavily beaten. Another challenge during the first days after the election was the complete absence of the internet connection. It actually started during protests before the elections, when the government just commanded the telecommunication companies to turn off the mobile internet, so the journalists would not be able to report events immediately. So we tried to be prepared for it. We all installed VPN services. I checked out all public Wi-Fi spots from cafes and restaurants, but even this did not really help, because even Wi-Fi, even home internet didn't work or work really poorly. So how did we deal with this situation? Firstly, we just tried to use Wi-Fi and home internet with VPN as long as this worked. Yes, it was really slowly, but better than nothing. Also, we have a strong spirit of solidarity among journalists, so if anybody had a good internet connection, they help others. And also we use our smartphones just as phones. So the journalists who work in the street, they just called editors in the office, report all necessary information, and the editors try to post it on website and social media. Of course, this did not work for videos. And I remember that one day my cameraman and I weren't really able to to send a video to our daily news. And instead, my colleagues just recorded my voice and broadcasted it. Later, we had a new phase of protest. It was a peaceful, big peaceful marches in August. On Sundays, every Sunday, we also had women's marches on Saturday. We also have seniors marches, students marches. Like everybody went to protest at that time. And with each march, with each Sunday, the intensity of repression increased, and more people were arrested. First, a journalist could be relatively safe if we were wearing blue vest, but then the authorities started to pull us out of the crowd specifically, as they say, just for documents check. But the thing is that this documents check would last 3, 4 or 5 hours, and obviously during that time we will not be able to work. One day I spent 6 hours in the police station till midnight. The authorities claimed that they could not connect with Ministry of Foreign Affairs and check whether I really have accreditation or not, although I had all necessary documents with me. Eventually, the authorities started to arrest journalists not for a couple of hours, but for some days. They organized litigation for allegedly disobeying police officers or for hooliganism, and arrested journalists for 10 or 15 days. And in turn, our journalistic community started to protest. We organized a march to the Ministry of Internal Affairs, asking to release our colleagues, but obviously it didn't work. The next step of the repression was the closure of the media. For Belarusian media, they just took away license. For foreign correspondents like me, they took away my accreditation. You know, in my childhood, we believed this specific plant, it's called plantain weed. If it applied to the wood, it would help it heal. So I posted a photo with my ID and this plantain weed to heal it, to make it well again. But obviously it didn't help. Even without accreditation, I continued to work, as well as all other Belarusian media. I could not appear on our news, but I continued to write my articles under a pseudonym, and sometimes I even fill my reports with the high risk of being arrested. But the work that I'm especially proud during that time is my interview with political prisoners while they have been in custody. You know, in Belarus, it is quite impossible to connect with the people in prison and conduct such an interview. And I'm sorry, for safety reasons, I cannot really explain how I did it, but I'm especially proud of this work. The next year, 2021, was probably the peak of repression against journalists. Their security officers came to the offices of Belarusian media with raid and search. They took away all computers and other technical stuff. This is the search in Belarusian Association of Journalists. Also, authorities started to block website of the independent media. They declared our independent media extremist organization, and most importantly, they started to arrest our journalists for criminal cases. But nevertheless, Belarusian journalists and Belarusian media continue to work, and actually they are working right now, but they are working from exile. According to the statistics, at least 400 journalists left Belarus, and I'm one of them. I left Belarus in September 2021. I was invited to a conference in Vilnius, Lithuania, but then my cameraman was arrested for 15 days, and Deutsche Welle, the media that I work for, was declared as extremist media, and I had no choice but to stay in Lithuania. Obviously, the work in exile is absolutely different from a normal one and much more difficult. Firstly, we have infrastructural problems. So the media should be registered in a new country, dealing with all types of bureaucracy. They should find a new office. Journalists should obtain visas and other legal documents to work legally. They should find a new apartment for them, relocate their families. And as a person who had to deal with all this stuff, I can definitely say that it's not so easy to start a new life from scratch. Second problem is the legal status of Belarusian media in Belarus. Most of our media, as I said, was declared as extremist media. And you can ask, why should Belarusian media actually care about the status in Belarus? They're already in exile. But the thing is that our authorities claimed that even the subscription for so-called extremist media anywhere on social media is a criminal offense. So our readers can be arrested just for reading news. And that is why they cannot comment on our publication, they cannot make a repost of our articles. And also there is a danger for our experts. Belarusian war expert Igor Lebedok was sentenced to 5 years of imprisonment just for commenting to one of our media. Third problem is the lack of correspondence in Belarus. For above-mentioned reasons, Belarusian media in exile cannot cooperate with journalists in Belarus without putting them at a high risk. And this makes the fact-checking of information quite difficult. So in this respect, we mostly rely on user-generated content. Since 2020, we built a strong trust with our audience, and sometimes audience sends us information. But of course, there are some problems in this regard, like state agents, propagandists, or pranksters tried to cheat our independent media in order to show them in low lights. And in this regard, we can only apologize for misinformation and to check information more properly in the future. In addition, as I said, we have problems with website blocking. This problem we deal with mirror links for each publication. So this is the post in Telegram channel of the Belarus, and it is stated that there is like a normal link to the publication, to the website. But in case the people cannot open it, there is also alternative link, like mirror link, to each publication. And also, in this regard, we try to educate our readers. We try to explain them how to install VPN services, how to use it. In my personal view, right now, it is not only our responsibility to report about events in Belarus, but also it is responsibility of our readers to make an effort to receive reliable information and not only state propaganda. Concluding my speech, I would like to say that I'm extremely proud to be a Belarusian journalist and have a great colleagues who are able to work in a difficult situation. But also, I would like to tell of those colleagues who cannot work right now because they are political prisoners. 32 journalists, 15 women, 3 editors-in-chief. These people, these journalists, should write reports. They should film documentaries. They should win big prizes and do anything but not to be in prison. And this is my reality check for you. In Belarus, in European country, journalists are in prison just for doing their job. You know, I do believe that one day my country, Belarus, will become a democratic country. And all political prisoners will be released and I will return home. But right now, all that my colleagues and I can do is just to work hard, to report about Belarus and to stay true to our professional principles, whether it is during protest, under repression, or in exile. Thank you.